Kumaon, like neighboring Garhwal, lies on the main axis of the Great Himalaya range. From the eastern ramparts of Nanda Devi at 25,645 feet, on through Nanda Kot and the Panchchuli group, both 22,000ers, finally meeting up with the Nepalese Api group along the gorge of the Mahakali. The Great Himalaya rises in a gentle sweep along the plains of Uttar Pradesh without any intervening ranges making their presence felt. The uplift of the Himalayas is a 60-million-year-old process which continues unabated even today. And on the geological time scale, the uplift is still pronounced. The annual growth rate is 10 centimeters or a meter every 10 years, 10 meters every century. But along with the tectonic forces, there are other macro-environmental factors introducing changes in the Himalayan regions. One of these is the recession of the glaciers, probably due to increased global warming. Simply put, the recession implies that more ice melts in the summers than is replenished in the winter months. A gradual withering away of huge reservoirs of ice that keep our rivers fed. In this Kumaon region, the Pindari and other glaciers have receded as much as 3 kilometers in the past years, leaving in their wake huge, debris-strewn morainic plains. Kumaon is the land of the Mahakali and its major right bank tributaries, the Dhauli Ganga, the Gauri Ganga and the Ram Ganga. Like the other major source rivers of the Ganga, the Mahakali too originates on the north side of the Great Himalayan Crest Zone and forces a passage through the main range to merge with the Ganga in the distant plains of Uttar Pradesh. The left bank tributaries of the Gauri Ganga emerge from the Balati Glaciers and the vast snowfields of the Panchchuli group. Middle Kumaon, the areas around Almora, offer a unique Himalayan landscape. Low rolling ranges covered in the large part with extensive pine forests teeming with birds and animals. The landscape is a typical formation of lazy little rivers and streams meandering their way through. The forests are like primly maintained parkland, and the villages are identical and immaculately maintained and painted houses.
This spider is extremely particular about his nest. It only takes a few minutes for him to inspect and eject a twig tossed against it. Kumaon would be a spider lover's paradise, if indeed there is any such person. Many different species are observable almost anywhere in the lower hills. In fact, they seem to think that the overhead wiring was put up solely for their convenience. Mahasir is the great fish of Kumaon's rivers. In the early years of this century, catches taller than a tall man were reported, though the largest we spotted in the crystal clear November waters was 3 feet.
Like Garhwal, Kumaon too has a large number of lakes, mostly formed as a result of the active tectonics in the region. Nanita Lake, of course famous, more so nowadays, as a vivid example of environmental degradation. But the picture is similar in most of Kumaon's lakes, like Bhimtal, Khurpatal, and others. Unlike Garhwal, Kumaon's lakes are at lower, more accessible altitudes, and they have paid the price. We'll take a more detailed look at Kumaon's lakes in today's Eco Watch. Kumaon, or more specifically, the areas around Nainital, are the last known habitat of the enigmatic Himalayan mountain quail, last sighted in these regions over 100 years ago. Thereafter, the bird has vanished and is probably now extinct. Dr. Salim Ali's excellent handbook describes its habits as reluctant to fly almost when trampled upon, heavily and for short distances. Like the famous dodo, the mountain quail too seems too naive for coexistence with humanity. Like other endangered Himalayan species, the quail's natural habitat was the dense understory on these steep wooded hillsides. Unfortunately, it is this middle altitude, low scrub and brush that has suffered the most at the hands of human beings. No wonder all the quails and pheasants are fast disappearing. The Binsagar Valley abounds with thick forests and wildlife species like Himalayan black bear, sirao, leopard, goral, and tragopan, koklas, kalij, and trio pheasants. Apparently, Stone Age man too found this environment congenial, for evidence of human settlement during the Mesolithic-Chalcolithic period are supposed to have been discovered here at the Lakhu Udyar rock shelter. Strange to think that thousands of years ago somebody sheltered here and doodled to while away the time. It's almost like a window to the past. The early medieval history of Kumaon is the history of the Katyuri dynasty. The Katyuri kings ruled from the 7th to the 11th century, holding sway at the peak of their powers over vast areas of Kumaon, Garhwal and western Nepal. The old town of Bajnath near Almora was the capital of this dynasty and a center of art. Like the tiny medieval European villages that built huge cathedrals, small obscure villages in the Himalayas are often home to temple complexes of great beauty that have survived the intervening centuries precisely because of their obscurity. The main architectural innovation of the Katyuri dynasty was the replacement of bricks with hewn stone. Large blocks were quarried and somehow transported over hilly terrain, and iron clamps used to hold the blocks together. Old houses and temples here offer some of the most exquisitely carved doors and windows anywhere in the Himalayas. Here at Katarmal, overlooking the valleys below, is located the famous 900-year-old Sun Temple, built in the declining years of the Katyuri dynasty. If this temple looks a bit incomplete, that is because its intricately carved doors and panels have been taken to the National Museum in Delhi. This is an interesting variation of closing the stable door after the horse has bolted, for the 10th century idol of the presiding deity was stolen earlier. After an interregnum of a couple of centuries, the Chans of Pithoragarh became the ruling dynasty. The magnificent temple complex at Jagesville, with its cluster of 124 temples, was completed by them over a space of 2 centuries. The evocative carvings reflect Buddhist influence and are balanced by these beautiful surroundings. Truly deserves to be called a World Heritage Site. Nanita, once the proud possessor of a beautiful alpine lake, today is a textbook example of environmental degradation. As with most Himalayan paradises, Nainital has paid a price for its beauty. Over the past few decades, Nainital town has mushroomed to accommodate its expanding population, the summer hordes of tourists, and the yearly stream of honeymooners. All this has resulted in years of accumulation of tons of excreta and sewage in the Nanita Lake, which besides making the water unsuitable for human contact, has led to a drastic change in the lake's internal life systems. The decaying of large quantities of organic wastes and the surface accumulation of inorganic refuse has drastically affected the level of dissolved oxygen in the water, graphically reflected by the growing mortality rate of the cold water carp and other fish in this lake. Extremely high levels of nitrogen and phosphorus indicate that as a biotic entity, the Nanita Lake is well on the road to becoming a dead swamp. Increasing siltation and accumulation of sewage in the shallow areas is not only reducing the area of the lake, but also destroying the breeding ground of the carp in the shallow waters of the periphery. It is precisely along these banks that the maximum effect of human presence have made themselves felt. Photographs taken in the opening decades of the century show the lake to inhabit a far larger area than at present. This flat piece of ground on the northern shores of the lake is a popular playground today, while 70 years ago it was a part of the lake. The little lake of Sukhothal near Nainital town has virtually been choked by silt and sediments. Accelerated construction activities have so destabilized the slopes around that this little lake is now known as Sukhothal or dry lake. It is not difficult to envision the same fate for the Nanita Lake in the not so distant future. Kumaon is the transition zone between the western and the central Himalayas in terms of both geomorphology and flora and fauna. Arguably due to hunting, particularly in the early years of this century, Kumaon witnessed a steady decline in its wildlife population. The trend, at least for some of the major animals, has been fortunately reversed for the time being, mainly due to intensive management and conservation of wildlife. In fact, India's first national park is situated in the lower Kumaon hills, near a bend in the Ramganga River. Corbett Park encompasses a typical dune valley, sandwiched between the low Shivaliks and the foothills of the lesser Himalaya. A primeval landscape of dense forests and tall grasses. Named after the great white hunter, the park is famous for its biodiversity. Home as it is for species ranging from the tiger and Asian elephant to monitor lizards and the Ganges gharial, a leaner and meaner version of the crocodiles found elsewhere. The Asian elephant, Elephas maximus, once roamed the continent from Syria to northern China. At the beginning of this century, they numbered in the millions, now reduced to an estimated 55,000 in the wild, in isolated pockets. India, with nearly 20,000 wild elephants and at least 2,000 captive ones, is home to 35% of Asia's elephants, and is a genuine success story as far as conservation efforts are concerned. These have been helped by the average Indian's respect for life in general, and elephants in particular. Corbett also has a large resident population of tame elephants who are utilized by the rangers, and as you can see, the training is on the job. Elephants are called pachyderms, meaning, literally, thick skin, which is not quite true as elephants have very sensitive skin. A dust bath enables it to gain vital sunburn protection and hence also the need for frequent baths, helping as they do in cooling their enormous body mass. For all these activities, it is the elephant's unique appendage, the trunk, which comes into play. Over nearly 60 million years, evolutionary forces have shaped this from an elementary snout to a multi-purpose tool of incredibly complex construction. The trunk, through an array of nearly 50,000 muscles, serves a staggering array of functions. There is perhaps no better example on Earth of muscular bioengineering on such a fantastic scale. We decided to spend a day atop a treetop machan, observing a water hole, trying to get an overview of life in the jungle, as it were. That life in the jungle is no picnic became clear in a couple of hours. Something as simple as a drink of water involves an operation as complete in its paranoia as sneaking behind enemy lines. These peacocks have an evolved procedure and take turns while the others keep watch. This deer has a considerably harder time of it being alone and apparently extremely conscious of it. He is so keyed up that, and there he goes. This little turtle has no idea what a sensation it caused with its entrance. Aha, and enters stage right, the superstars of the show. These guys are obviously afraid of no one. And with good reason. A 5-ton elephant has no natural enemies except perhaps man. Corbett, however, is not for the lover of megafauna alone. The bird watcher or the insect lover can have an equally engrossing time here. And if anybody wants to study ant architecture, this is the place to do it.